Audio production.
Remy boy, yeah. 17:38. I'm like, hey, what's up, hello? Since your pretty ass soon as you came in the door. I just wanna chill, got a sack for us.
Hello everyone, welcome to my new show that is being released today that is called the official Fetty Wap Meet the Fockers podcast. Now, just a quick explanation of what this is all about. I have been recently, I've been very recently successful with podcasts, and I can admit it, and I am aware of it. I started a Star Wars podcast, which was very successful, and so far there's only been one episode of the first season of that show, but there will be more in the future, I'm pretty sure. And I've also started another podcast called the Official Jim Carrey Podcast, which is cast all about Jim Carrey and the films of Jim Carrey and the movies Jim Carrey has made. And that was a big success. I didn't end up releasing an episode, and I did end up cancelling it before that first episode was made and released. But it was a big success in terms of Jim Carrey is a huge actor, and if there's a podcast about him, there's no way that it would fail. So those are my two sort of big achievements over the last however long recently. And this podcast is my new sort of dream project, my new passion project. The thing is that the two topics that I'll be talking about are Fetty Wap and Meet the Artist, and Meet the Fockers, the movie, the Meet the Fockers movie starring Robert De Niro, Ben Stiller, Dustin Hoffman, all of those guys. And the reason why I'm sort of combining these two topics, which aren't usually talked about in a similar setting, is because I can only do so much, you know what I mean? I only have so much time, and if I'm hosting a podcast about Star Wars, and I'm hosting a podcast, if I ever bring back the Jim Carrey podcast and release an episode of that, that's going to be two shows that I'm running, two like very successful shows. So I can't then have a podcast about Fetty Wap and his music and his life, and a fourth show about the movie Meet the Fockers. That's just too much. And I think that anyone who's ever been creative and made projects and made different things and expressed themselves in a creative way like I am, they would know that that's just too much to do and too much organization. And then there's guests, and then there's if I ever decide to have a co-host on any of those, I probably won't, because this is sort of my own interests. But I mean, you never know. I can't tell the future. I don't know if there will ever be a co-host on any of those shows. But you can see where I'm coming from. I can't run 4 different podcasts. That's sort of, it is sort of insane. So that's why with these two topics, I'm sort of bringing them together in one podcast, because they are both very good, and I'm very interested in both of them, the artist Fetty Wap and the movie Meet the Fockers. So this first episode is sort of just an introductory sort of, I think my microphone turned off. Ooh, let me just check that. No, everything's fine. The microphone didn't turn off. The show must go on, as I always say. So it is surprising that I run 4 shows, 4 podcasts, which, as everyone knows, podcasts are audio based. So it is funny that I would actually stuff up the mic like that. But, you know, these things happen. Nobody's perfect. I never claimed to be a perfect person, so these things will happen. As I was saying, I'm not sure what I was talking about. This is just sort of lost track of where I was at with this. So this is sort of an this is sort of an introductory, sort of just letting everyone know what to expect from this show, just so you're not jumping into the deep end of the pool straight away with this show. If you don't know how to swim, you don't want to jump into the deep end of a pool straight away. That's just sort of my own sort of thing, my own pet peeve that some people do. They don't know how to swim, so they just jump right into the deep end. So if this show is the deep end of the pool, you guys don't know how to swim, so that's why this is me sort of teaching you how to swim in that way, just letting you know what to expect and giving you all the details. So this show is primarily about the music of Fetty Wap and the movie Meet the Fockers. So everyone knows Fetty Wap. He's had many great achievements in music recently. I am a big fan of the music of Fetty Wap, and I just have so many opinions about his work and his music and everything about what he does. There are many interesting things about him, and I can't wait to get into all of that stuff on this show. So that's sort of what the Fetty Wap side of the podcast will be. The other side is about the movie Meet the Fockers, which is a great interest to me. I love this movie. It is one of my favorite of all time movies, and my knowledge and my opinions about the movie are sort of unlimited. So I thought, well, how can I get these opinions out into the world so they're not just constantly floating around in my brain all day 24/7. So I thought, well, I'll make a podcast and I can sort of just go for it. So as everyone knows probably, Meet the Fockers is a movie starring Ben Stiller of movies like Night at the Museum and Duplex. Stars Robert De Niro. Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro are sort of side by side partners of the movie. And then there's some other great actors like Dustin Hoffman of, I watched something he was in the other day. What was it? I'm just trying to think. How could I forget this movie? Just the other day I watched a movie he was in. Pretty sure he was in it. Dustin Hoffman, who plays Bernie Focker in Meet the Fockers movie. He plays, I can't remember anything about the movie. It was a movie, there were two guys. There was Dustin Hoffman and another guy. Sort of a famous movie. Aha, it was Rain Man. I just remembered. I watched Rain Man the other day. At first I was thinking Forrest Gump because I also watched that movie recently, but that is Tom Hanks of Castaway. So it wasn't, Dustin Hoffman isn't in Forrest Gump. He's in Meet the Fockers and in Rain Man, which I watched the other day. I do like the movie Rain Man. Maybe I should make a Rain Man podcast. But no, this podcast is exclusively about Fetty Wap and Meet the Fockers, so I should try and just stay on topic. On that note, I should mention, on this podcast about Meet the Fockers, it is just primarily about Meet the Fockers. No Meet the Parents and no Little Fockers. I know those movies are related to Meet the Fockers, but there will be no talk of Meet the Parents. I actually run an account on Twitter, a very popular account about Meet the Fockers, which is sort of how all this started, where I sort of talk about Meet the Fockers and the movie and my opinions on it. So it is sort of like just it is sort of like a podcast, but it is a Twitter account, and it doesn't have anything about Fetty Wap on it. So follow that. The username is MeetFockersFan, at MeetFockersFan. Very successful Twitter, and it is very interesting. It is an interesting read if you are interested in the movie Meet the Fockers. So that, I'm just going to close it off here. This has been episode 1, sort of an introductory episode of this sort of Fetty Wap Meet the Fockers podcast. I hope everyone is excited. There will be many episodes to come. Make sure you share with your friends and family. Send the link around, because this is going to be a very interesting show. This sort of thing hasn't really been done before, combining something like someone like Fetty Wap and a movie like Meet the Fockers. Those two sort of things don't usually come together, so this is sort of innovative on my part, sort of a genius, I know it's genius, that's the thing, it's sort of a genius thing I've come up with that I'm putting out for free, by the way. Not many things of this level of genius sort of are free, because people usually try and slap a trademark or sponsors or things of that nature on it. So I am just giving this out for free. So yes, that's what this show is about. I'm very excited, and yeah, so thanks for listening, and get excited for future episodes coming out. Thanks.
RGF Production. Remy boy, yeah. 17:30, I'm like, hey, what's up, hello? Sent your pretty ass soon as you came in the door. I just wanna chill, got a sack for